You're listening to eCommerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder, and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
Well, everyone, welcome back to eCommerce Fastlane. I am your host, Steve Hutt. Now, today we're going to dive into something that I believe probably could transform kind of how you're thinking about growing and scaling your Shopify store. Now, I know a lot of merchants every day, they're typically, their day-to-day is really all about like marketing and kind of product development and, but eventually I think a lot of businesses usually hit, I'm going to call this invisible ceiling. I think part of it, and we just talked offline for recording, but this can happen a lot where orders start pouring in, but now suddenly you're drowning in like fulfillment chaos and all the craziness that goes along with that. Think about like split shipments and all these things that kind of eat into margin. And I think it's inventory nightmares really start to unfold. And all of a sudden now customers start complaining, and then there's slow delivery times and all that kind of stuff. It gets a little bit crazy. And that's why I have today's guest on today. His name is Aras. He's the Chief Revenue Officer of a company called ShipMonk. Now, they're one of America's fastest growing 3PLs. What's really unique about them, and I'm sure we're going to hear it right from Aras directly, but their platform is very unique because they have this kind of, from my research, was this proprietary kind of 4-in-1 technology platform. And you think of things like a warehouse management system, plus it has an order management system, it has an inventory management system, and there's even something even more complex, this transportation management system. All of these integrated systems are all built into it, versus maybe a lot of the other 3PLs that are out there, or even things that if you're a wholly owned warehouse where you're shipping out of your garage or a warehouse that you're renting, usually you have to go and get these different vendors and add these pieces of software, and there's middleware and lots of craziness going on, where ShipMonk does things quite uniquely different. So that's why I have Aras on today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Steve. That's you kind of nailed it with ShipMonk.
Right?
I think the way we look at ourselves is, we're not a broker or a marketplace. We're a tech forward operator. So we run the physical infrastructure, we control the labor, we run the systems, and really that operational control allows us to really be consistent at scale. And what we're seeing is that a lot of those tech first 3PLs are outsourcing. Like, what we have high conviction around is actually the most important part of the experience, and that's the like actual movement of goods, the hard stuff, the people stuff, the buildings, and it's that collaboration between the tech and the ops that really makes the difference.
Yeah, I know. This is amazing. So let's talk about, that was one of the main points that I was thinking about today, was about like this inflection point that can happen in a business when all of a sudden they have product market fit, and then, or they have some kind of a flash sale, or, they're on Indiegogo and who knows, something crazy happens and all of a sudden, or they're on Shark Tank. There's a lot of craziness that can happen all of a sudden. Now they believe that either they can do it themselves, or they feel their 3PL has the power and the capacity to be able to fulfill these orders. So like, what happens when a business starts doing 500 orders, 1,000 orders, 10,000 orders a month? Like, is there something that happens or that you see where things start to break? And then like, what does that mean for the business when these different parts of the business start breaking from a fulfillment perspective?
Yeah, great question. I think the dangerous thing too is the first warning signs are almost invisible, right? Like, you're solving fulfillment problems with your leadership's time. Whether it's like the founders are like manually fixing orders, you might have an ops manager and they're, chasing inventory issues, but the problem becomes you're reacting and you're not scaling. And I think one thing we all know, whether you're a business owner, operator, entrepreneur, is like time is everything. So you see that first. And then the second sign is you don't immediately feel, but then you start to see it in the balance sheet, right? Like the margin erosion that starts to take place. Shipping rates are climbing because you're not zoned optimally, or stockouts are creeping up, or inventory's kind of in this idle kind of moment. And because you lack that system visibility, it hurts, right? And then I would say the final one and the most obvious one and the most painful one is customer experience, right? You start to get that degradation of, packages arriving late or broken unboxing moments. And then that ultimately starts that like long tail of churn and the cost of waiting, whether it's like the slowed growth or the lost word of mouth. And then you're seeing your rising CAC because you're not monetizing the customers you want. And that's the cyclone that ends up taking place.
Yeah, this is pretty wild. So I want to maybe back up a tiny bit because I want to make sure people understand, the space that you play in and where ShipMonk really is a valuable partner for so many. I mean, some of the biggest, baddest brands, even brands that I manage, I used to manage at Shopify, like Dr. Squatch, the men's soap company, a whole bunch of others. I see different resources here and different case studies and logos. Like, holy smokes, I used to manage those accounts when I was at Shopify, and they're ShipMonk customers even to this day. So it's really, really cool. And so I just want to understand like some of the core services that ShipMonk offers that you believe are maybe unique to other maybe notable peers in the space.
Yeah, great question. I think like we look at it like true ownership model. We run the warehouses, we control the WMS, we own the customer experiences. And when you look at a lot of the 3PLs today, really they're just like networks of, partner warehouses, or they're stitched together with middleware. And I think that model does work for certain brands that they might want the control, but for us, that really breaks at scale or when complexity rises. And that's why we've really leaned into what I would say is another defining part for us is we're a tech-enabled operator and not really the tech broker. Like we're not stitching together third-party fulfillment networks. And because of that, the tech stack really allows real-time visibility, a deeper look into the businesses we work with from a data perspective. And then importantly, like how we build and even design product, whether it's across billing or inventory or everything else, it's really intentional and it's with the long view and back to that original component of control, right? And that ownership model that we really believe in.
Really interesting. And I noticed too, and I got pinged actually from someone in Shopify. We're talking about the Shopify's fulfillment network, and we knew that last year, there was that, there was an original acquisition, then there was a sell off, and then now SFN is kind of doing its thing and trying to partner up with the right 3PL networks. And it's interesting that ShipMonk was welcomed into this kind of, I call it like a trusted kind of 3PL network. Can you talk a little bit about what this partnership means now from Shopify's fulfillment network and now connecting to ShipMonk?
Absolutely. Shopify, near and dear to both of our hearts. I think for us, when we look at our customer base, and it's almost very similar to the D2C stack you see everywhere, whether it's Shopify or some of the returns or Loop, et cetera. And for us, Shopify is the ecosystem, is the platform, is really the merchant's backbone, and an opportunity to, partner together to be a part of that kind of preferred marketplace, I think just brings our companies together, not just from like the simple stuff like lead pass flow and all of that, but more importantly, staying connected on the problem solving that needs to take place in this space, in fulfillment, in logistics, and that coordination of not just like our exec team, but theirs, and where we can take this model so that the merchants feel supported, feel educated, and feel like they're in the hands of a partnership that can scale. That was really the goal, the intent. And, as we both know, Shopify has dabbled in different ways with the fulfillment network, but I think they're feeling coherent right now in the direction, and inviting us to be a part of that, I think, was a validation of how they see kind of ShipMonk fitting in that.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is the whole like the Shopify Plus partnership, and I think that's another, I think this is probably public knowledge, but it's just like half or more of Shopify's revenue is coming out of like the Plus merchants only. There's only 15,000 Plus brands, and there's 4.9 million other brands on core. And so knowing that, it's a really sweet spot to saying, hey, no, we have the data privacy and the scale and the infrastructure to be able to connect to these high volume brands to, really ShipMonk can really manage a lot of this complex fulfillment and be a true operator of, and then you can just literally pass the torch over, and there's a tight connection between Shopify Plus store and ShipMonk now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like for us to have been a part of that Plus journey, the the compounding really has been, that classic Munger line, like the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. Well, Shopify Plus certainly proved that even as its own almost standalone business aside from Shopify. So it's been great to see those internal merchants that, were babies at one point are now behemoths in the space and are defining like the market. And that for us, like you mentioned Dr. Squatch and all the noise they've made and recently as well. It's just been really exciting to see these merchants that now are the big boys and girls in this
Yeah,
space.
no, 100%. One thing I see too, Shopify is, even more recently with summer editions, like as you know, every half year they bring out, 100, 150-ish new kind of updates and platform things they've been working on. One of the things that I noticed, other than their new POS 10 that they released, was they seem to be really promoting the B2B opportunity out there. They feel that, not that they have a firm grasp of B2C, or these kind of direct-to-consumer kind of, I think it is a default install for a lot of D2C businesses. But when you think about the B2B fulfillment, they feel like there's just like the size of the pie is significantly larger selling wholesale than it is from a retail perspective. So can you talk a bit about what your mindset is around that, what ShipMonk's infrastructure is to be able to handle potential B2B fulfillment?
Yeah, it's, B2B is canalizing, right? Like you see the market, you see the 360 opportunity. And I think whether it was the early acquisition of Shopify when we were at Plus and everyone getting excited that we're going to like break into and change B2B forever to even now, I think our core sweet spot at ShipMonk has historically been D2C. That said, what we're seeing and how we're making progress, like even as we're thinking into the back half of 25 and into 2026, is this is a space that we need to make investments in, and supporting B2B workflows is actually, that's an extension of our D2C programs. We're not trying to be this like pure B2B wholesale, 3PL competing on, the pallets and the containers. And I think it's just hard because you're doing this open heart surgery with your product. Like every time you're trying to, get $2,000 or remix what your core identity is. But we're starting to think about, how do we support these merchants that have that diversification or are interested in that motion and want that unified experience, whether it's inventory and across for both D2C and wholesale. And I think like what makes us strong here is that brands don't have to fragment that inventory across multiple providers. But B2B is not the holy grail, but it is, I think, an area that you just want to be the one-stop shop, and to not invest in that space, I think, is short-sighted in the moment. But it is a challenging space to operate in.
Yeah, it's interesting. I talk about, I remember reading somewhere about just how big the B2B kind of like e-commerce space is alone. And they say that it's at least 50 times larger than the D2C market. I think D2C, I don't know if they're saying that's like $500 billion.
50 times larger and probably 50 times more complicated.
Right?
But we'll get there one day. I think, as you said, like Shopify's been thinking about it a lot and intentionally. I think you're starting to see the space just, back to being not just multi-channel, but how do you play and partner with the D2C side of your business?
Yeah, and 100%. Another area that comes up on a lot of brands' mind is around the cross-border fulfillment. I always make this going joke, especially for like Canadian brands, let's say, for example. I used to always joke and saying, hey, like, do you sell into, and this is for American brands, if they're going to sell into Canada? And they say, well, no, we're not quite there yet. I know there's Shopify Markets and Markets Pro, and there's a lot, there's ways of dealing with merchant records and the merchant of record, and then understanding duties and taxes and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's technology to kind of handle that whole flow. But I always would joke with merchants and saying, imagine not selling to New York or California or Florida, because that population in those states is the size of Canada. Could you imagine not selling into California? And they say, well, no. Okay, then why are you not selling into Canada? Because the opportunity is there. That's a massive market in Canada, almost 40 million people. But fair enough, the conversion rates are lower from American brands into Canada, because as a Canadian, you get a little bit suspect when all of a sudden duty and taxes are not in cart, or they have some crazy warnings in the cart and saying, hey, you're responsible for this potential fictitious duty and tax and brokerage bill that may arrive. What's ShipMonk doing right now from a kind of a cross-border fulfillment? I just would love to hear what you guys are doing now.
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, it's the noise of the moment, right? And we're seeing that how much you can impact everything from margins to scale. And it's just becoming a bigger part of the conversation for brands. So whether it's tariff shifts or international or rising shipping costs, I think for us, like we're not trying to replace the, global freight providers and forwarders, but we are uniquely positioned to support brands in that localized fulfillment. We do have presence in Canada, the UK, Mexico, Czech. And so we do have that kind of modular network approach. And brands can stand up, those inventory nodes closer to really where they're at. They can reduce that customs friction, think about taxation, and more importantly, think about cash flow and management as well. I think the bonded warehouse strategy is something that has been one of the bets that we have made so that, merchants aren't overcommitting both financially and are able to kind of time their business and be effective. So that's something that we've played in. But we're also, I think, really quite bullish generally on, and one of the things that I've loved about ShipMonk is when I was doing my research, the co-founder and president, Kevin, like he had a lot of conviction that like, hey, like we are a genuine 3PL. This is the way we're going to play the game. And I think when it comes to international and cross-border, I don't see us being the kind of provider that all of a sudden is going to be, in 32 different countries and is trying to do localized fulfillment. Like there is such a massive domestic opportunity right now, even in the US. And that's kind of where we're continuing to lean in. And while leveraging the access points and the relationships we have in some of our other nodes that we think are advantageous.
Yeah, very cool. The other thing I was thinking about too is like looking at your platform, I see that, from a solution perspective, you do have a reverse logistics kind of a return process that's kind of baked into being a ShipMonk customer. I think, would that be in lieu of being a Loop Returns or Returnly or Happy Returns? Is it in lieu of that, or does it work in conjunction with these sorts of technologies?
I think it works in conjunction with those technologies. Like it is a really interesting space because I think we see, in particular with like larger customers or customers that are in apparel and et cetera, it is something that you need to focus on. We have it as one of our product investments, but we're at this point, like we're not trying to like replace those players. They're partners. We work closely. It's just an adjacent, I think, investment area that we want to make sure that we're building properly around because we know how important it is for merchants and customers at the end of the day.
I see. So I want to talk a little bit about, I don't want to talk about Q4 already, but I believe it or not, I'm seeing some BFCM kind of webinars, even Shopify starting to produce things about newsletters and segmenting your customer lists and really starting to think about, even though I know we're just starting summer now, usually it's August when people really start thinking about when their kids kind of back to school in mid-August, and all of a sudden, okay, we really got to buckle down now and think about Q4 and holiday season, and this is where all the money's being made. What's ShipMonk's kind of mindset right now about thinking about this peak season? What things can merchants be doing today to think about the forecasting, to think about their 3PL partner? I just want to plant the right seeds so that people are being smart with their time right now, knowing that they could have this better payoff in the end.
Yeah, eventually BFCM is going to just be the entire year.
I think know, right?
We're pushing it by 1 month every year. So I think the way we look at it is the brands who win, they start preparing in Q2, right? Like they start forecasting their demand curves. They're trying to think about their inventory and they lock in inventory placements. And they're collaborating with us on whether it's carrier capacity, but just general like information sharing strategy, like what do you have coming around the corner, et cetera, et cetera. And the merchants who struggle are those that are reactive. And I don't think there needs to be this like perfect awareness, but the conversations and the planning needs to be there. So if you're ordering inventory too late or don't know your true demands by SKU, haven't optimized around cutoffs, we're not able to be in a position where we're then going out and doing our full scale, stress tests before peak. Like, can we handle your 3x, current daily volume tomorrow, et cetera. And I think that's how you win with BFCM. So it's a backbone of communication, data, and planning. And that triangle kind of offense approach to that big moment, I think, is where we see the planners win, right? If you're organized, you're prepared, it's better to lean into that as opposed to like the greatness of like, oh, we're reacting and like, wow, like we blew it out of the water or we're under forecast. So I think the data plays a really important role in that.
Oh, very cool. Now, what about the kind of the multi-channel fulfillment side of a business and how Shipmonk can help? Because I think about, obviously wholly owning your store, your Shopify store makes sense. A lot of brands, as you know, are into all the marketplaces, Amazon being at the top of the food chain, but there's a lot of great marketplaces where people are getting their products out, going where their customers are. And even a lot of social selling is going on. It's insane right now with TikTok shops and others. And so what's your technology stack? How are you able to help these multi-channel merchants make sure that all their, potentially their Amazon orders, their Shopify orders, and even their social media orders that are coming like through TikTok and others?
Yeah, I love this because I don't think this is like a logistics answer or I think this is just like a business answer in today's world, right? Like the old model was like D2C inventory here, Amazon FBA inventory there, wholesale somewhere else, and
Yeah.
every channel in business kind of operating in this silo. And what does that fragmentation do? Well, all of a sudden you're hurting your margin, you're complicating forecasting, capital's tied up, and really it's that operational chaos that hurts. So for us, and our advantage is that, we really give brands that single pool to serve all of their channels with visibility, with real time, and, with that powerful word of just simplicity. Right. And I think that's what really actually differentiated Shopify and early Shopify, whether it was Plus or their core, was just how simple it was to, as an operator or business owner, just to navigate. So for us, that unified system, inside ShipMonk's WMS and, the automated channels as orders flow in, the real-time visibility and all of that, it matters to merchants, right? Like they get that growth flexibility, they get that data clarity, they can start to be capital efficient. And that's really what makes it so that, you don't hit that wall.
Yeah. Another thing too that is on people's minds too is all around just AI in general. Like people think about, well, how can I leverage AI for customer service? How can I leverage AI for inventory or planning or, customer support? There's so many areas and applications for these large language models now. How has AI been integrated now into ShipMonk's I guess you must have kind of an AI strategy of some sort. Is AI making any like intelligent decisions for a business? And then what sort of things are we seeing because of implementing this AI?
Yeah, it's such an interesting space to think about AI here, right? Because there's the specialized AI, which is, has always really existed in fulfillment, and, it's the conveyor belts and the efficiency moves that, you can start to integrate. And that's like the hard side of the equation. And, Amazon has clearly invested a lot in that space and robotics. And who knows, maybe we're going to all have Optimuses everywhere, like 10 years from now, cleaning our houses and doing everything else. But
At some point.
I think for us, where we think about AI, and I don't want to use the word in this like LLM type sense, or it's really about shifting fulfillment from reactive to predictive. I think that's how we view AI, and that's in the carrier space and our VCN network and demand forecasting and dynamic inventories and like we said, like carrier routing optimization, or even something as simple as like labor allocation. And you think about like the workforce management. I think that's where it's impactful, because the other side of the equation that a lot of, I think, investors get excited about, or I think people just, when you're chatting with them, is they want to see that like in the warehouse, like hardware AI. The problem with a lot of those tools is they actually, the costs are high and the efficiency is lower than what you would expect in a lot of cases. So it's really hard to delineate between like which one is an amplifier and which one is a drag. So that might be a testament of the market being early, and also like we said, like there's the Amazons of the world that clearly have an element of that. But Steven, as you know, like with 6 River and Shopify, like that was an AI play, and it was an AI pitch in a lot of ways, and it just didn't work out because of a whole host of reasons. So we're still early in the space. Obviously, I think it's irresponsible to not be bullish on AI in some ways, and you really have to think about what AI means for merchants. And for them, it's about, less inventory tied up, faster shipping, access to data, and real-time recommendations. But it's not something that I think for us that we're pinpointing like a specific thing that's going to just be a game changer. For us, it's about the competitive advantage that we have is controlling our own data and the warehouse execution, and then how we use AI to operationalize and not just analyze.
Yeah, I noticed too. I read somewhere about just this intelligent kind of warehouse management system that ShipMonk has created, and we think about like this automated slotting where literally you can find like the best location based on the item size and the order volume, so that it's short and sweet, like it's close to where it needs to get on the conveyor belt for a label to be created, or little things like understanding like the most efficient path through the warehouse to pick an order, or even like the right box size. Of all this technology exists now inside ShipMonk.
Yeah, and it solves the problems that are at the end of the day the most meaningful, right? It's about speed, simplicity, becoming efficient, and the time that unlocks for our teams to then focus on problems and invest in the product and think about the long term. So I think AI is an accelerant. I think there's a lot of opportunity on the things I mentioned, you mentioned, but we're also sensitive about the word just generally. Like, I think even as an exec or an operator in business, there's a lot of noise around the space as well. So you have to be careful because it's definitely transformational. It's kind of feels like the fifth industrial revolution, but it's also a dangerous space.
Yeah, exactly. You briefly mentioned it about data and data-driven decisions. Clearly, that's overall part of the platform. And can we talk about the importance of real-time data as it relates to ShipMonk? And are there any KPIs or like what does a person, like let's say a director of fulfillment or director of operations in an e-commerce business that says, hey, maybe ShipMonk's right for me because they give me access to this data, and I in partnership with ShipMonk, I'm able to make decisions based on the data that's being revealed to me, and like what is that data? So can you talk a little about that data compliance thing and what kind of KPIs people should be tracking and how you help people?
Yeah, there's a duality I think is interesting because I think data is one thing, right? But you also need like real-time visibility, or as close to real-time visibility as you can get into that data so that it's actually meaningful. And I think in most like that traditional kind of 3PL space, the data is there, but it's fragmented. So like the inventory counts lag, the physical movement, finance teams get fulfillment data weeks after the month closes, and brands don't really see those real-time changes until, the problems surface. And in scaling businesses, like delayed data, well, all of a sudden now you're delayed decisions, and, that delayed decision then all of a sudden is cost and margin. So I think for us, we want to give merchants that real-time control tower for their fulfillment. So it's the SKUs, the order, the inventory movement synced immediately across, the channel integrations, the warehouse operations, the carrier component, your billing and your cost analytics. So you're not like managing from reports, but you're really in this like live operational reality. And I think that's what merchants benefit from. So everything from like inventory accuracy to like their order routing to, like we said, like the financial control. So that's where we're at today. And that's how we think about it is it's not just having the data, but because of the way we structure our business in our company, that lens into the data is what really changes the game for merchants.
Very cool. What about the kind of local delivery kind of considerations? Because I always think that this kind of last mile approach, I feel that sometimes it just, from a speed perspective, is there any technology built into ShipMonk that allows for maybe some of these last mile providers really they can, come in, can grab the prod. I guess I just don't know the whole process of last mile as relates to your warehouses and your technology.
Yeah, I think for us, our tech-powered virtual carrier network is kind of our solution from the carrier perspective that merchants can, eliminate that constraint of like a single carrier shipping model. So we want to think about on-time delivery for you, but with cost-saving strategy and really thinking about like what carrier at what shipping zone, at what, package size and at what surcharge dynamic is the best carrier for your shipment. And that's when we're talking about AI, like that's AI, that's optimizing speed and cost dynamically. And the benefits are that, is that you obviously start then tapping into our buying power. Because if you're negotiating, singularly as a merchant, and you don't have this kind of like 3PL network, you don't have that leverage for exclusive rates. So for us, you get that access and that oomph of ShipMonk as we like go and negotiate with the FedExes, the UPSs, and you get that detailed, transparent shipping performance and metrics. So that's the real big thing. And I think the locals and the regionals, and we partner with some, definitely play a role in that. And so that's been our approach when we think of like transportation and the VCN is like, you need to intelligently select the ideal carrier for the shipments that you have. And what that means is just like, it's a balancing act. And that's balance is speed, cost, and your customer.
Yeah. Amazing. So I want to get into a case study if it's possible. Hopefully I don't put you on the spot here, but I went to your resources page and there's like quite a few case studies. Obviously there's Dr. Squatch here, is one of the brands I'm used to manage, but there's a lot of really big ones in here too. Like Tenzo Tea is massive. There's quite a few incredible brands that you've just called out here publicly. Is there anyone that you like to talk about to maybe to a new prospect that says, hey, you know what? Someone that's very similar to you in the market that you serve, here's the challenge they had. They learned about us, they implemented us, and now look what success or great looks like now for them. Is there anyone that you can think of that you can kind of maybe briefly discuss?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to share someone that is like necessarily a new customer that we haven't, gone too deep on, but I'll give you an example of an existing and actually a play off of what we were just talking about. I think we play and work very closely with Brooklinen, right? Like a large, noticeable, regarded brand. And they were investing in that carrier strategy with Singularity and like relying on one carrier. And in this environment, as you know, with like everything from tariffs to just being a business today and selling online and doing that, like margin compression is real. You feel it, it hurts. And so navigating for any merchant, like navigating savings gives you that compounded value. So for us, we started to kind of curate that story of, hey, like our carrier optimization layer can really help your business by thinking about, speed, diversifying the carriers we use, operating with a new carrier that you haven't experimented before with. And like, this is how this is ultimately going to create savings and for your business, not just down the line, but like quickly and like fast. And what can you do with those savings if you've all of a sudden, had a real head-on look at shipping and shipping costs. So that in coordination with like the delivery experience, one of the metrics tracked as we went and did this was, okay, if we are expanding, and this is where brands do get sensitive. It's like, yeah, we're working with this one carrier, but when we look at our like total tally of like complaints, it's consistent and it's right around this benchmark. We've never worked with this other carrier. Like, is it just all of a sudden going to blow up? And, are we going to all of a sudden see customer experience? But what we see when we've done experiments like this is like, you get that actually the combination of both savings, and we monitor the delivery experience and we monitor the feedback loop of how many complaint requests have come through and everything else. So I think that's been a win from like the VCN, the virtual carrier network. Sorry, that's what we call our strategy there. And it's just like helping you reclaim margin, right? And in today's world, like that's probably like one of the top 3 things that's going on for these businesses as they continue to think about growth, as they think about customer experience and all those like foundational pillars. There is this new reality of margin compression that's accelerating. And so our tactics need to match with that. And that's one that does that.
Interesting. While you were chatting there, I just threw that into Perplexity and just asked that question. And then it came up and it said that what's interesting is that ShipMonk helped increase their Brooklinens increased their order volume by 162% and 41% increase in on-time shipments. So it was really significant there. And they also made a comment here that also their expansion into multiple categories like retail locations and hospitality markets really has created what they're calling a very diverse fulfillment needs that kind of showcases how great ShipMonk actually is to be able to provide this sort of dedicated fulfillment solutions for this like massively growing business.
I definitely cannot validate those metrics. I played around with Perplexity and AI and all of that. Hey, they're great at some things.
Yeah. May not be others, but I think overall net, it seems that that there certainly is the power and infrastructure to do it. And Brooklinen obviously being a great partner and still continues to be a partner. That means something that they're still around, right?
Absolutely, and that's for us like. I think this is something that the businesses that really take that long view do well. And it's just got to be done through a lens of partnership and done through a lens of like both collaborating at the foundational level on the problem solving and getting excited about the problem solving. And I give Brooke Linen a lot of credit in that engagement with us. They were coming to us with ideas. We were coming to them with ideas. We're still collaborating on it. It's like a multi-year view of like, how do we address this core tactic around transportation and do it together to deliver success? So it's definitely the fun part of the business too.
Yeah. This is amazing. So we're almost wrapped up for today, but I guess it'd be nice to have a couple takeaways, I think, because, there's thousands of people listening to this episode right now. And I just want to make sure that I'm offering value. I know you feel the same way. It's just like, depending on the complexity and the maturity of, the founder or the marketer or the ops person that's listening right now, like, what's your sweet spot of who you believe is a great fit for ShipMonk? And then what do you believe some of the next steps could be for those that are listening today?
Yeah, great question. So for us, I think at a minimum, once you start to get to that place where you're doing 500 orders a month, you're starting to feel some of those pains and the value that we can provide and lean in on. And I think that's when you start to get to the point where it's like, all right, should I be considering a 3PL provider? So anywhere from that 500 up to, the 75,000, 100,000, a core part of our strategy. And actually what I found really interesting about ShipMonk when I joined is that it did have this this labeling and legacy of SMB because of its connectivity to obviously Shopify. But the actual product and the platform was far more scalable than I had originally expected. And most of the scalability issue wasn't a product or operational issue. It was like a sales and marketing issue. So it was like we weren't known, or we didn't go to market and tell the story about like how we can scale, the problems we solve, and all of that in the market. So I think that's one thing that's been really interesting. And I think the other thing I just leave with merchants and founders and everything else is, they think a lot about growth, and you think about, traffic, think about conversion rates. And at the end of the day, like, I think what brands sometimes miss is that like fulfillment is marketing. It's just that it happens almost exclusively post-click. And, you're spending so much to acquire this customer, but if you're not delivering the product fast, or if you're not delivering it accurately and with this great unboxing experience, you can burn that trust. So I think what it is, it's just it's the fuel layer that great fulfillment actually feeds that conversion, that retention, that LTV. And when that delivery promise is tight, you start to see it, and you start to see those conversion rates improve. The package, is on time, early, customers return more often. So I think there's a connectivity there that's sometimes missed. And for brands that are thinking about, engaging or interested in our product, I think hit the website. There's sign up flow there, but also feel free to check me out directly on LinkedIn, send me a message. Like, we're happy to help. Merchants reach out to us that are even under that 500 order a month minimum. And we still and I think this was just a great lesson of Shopify. Like, we still counsel, we still provide resources, because, that merchant, 4 years later might be one of the biggest cosmetics brands in the world. Like, you see the hyper scale of these businesses now, like even with the most recent, Haley Baldwin sale, like that wasn't a long period of time. I think it was like under 2 years.
Yeah, it was crazy.
A multi-billion-dollar play. So we're sensitive to that. We care a lot about the merchant. It's just the identity of the exec team, and kudos to the being founder-led. That's where it really comes from. So yeah, that's the bit of the ShipMonk story, a bit of the time and logistics, and how things are going.
Lovely. Okay, I'll make sure I update the show notes then to your LinkedIn profile. And yeah, you can just go to shipmonk.com. There's a nice link there to get a quote, or you can actually email them directly. Just kick the tires a bit to find out where you're at today, almost like a strategic partner a bit. Let's understand your current flow. Let's see if ShipMonk's platform could be or help you improve, improve that lever. I love what you said. I think it makes complete sense. Fulfillment really is marketing. It's so interesting. It's not really something that's on people's radar. We don't really say it like in those words like that, but truly it is. The post-purchase experience, I think, is so important. The expectation, you have this emotional connection to clicking the buy now button and putting your credit card in. So once that friction is gone, now the order is not done. It's actually a lot of things have just started at that point. It's like, what are you doing to make sure you surprise and delight your customers? And clearly ShipMonk's got that figured out. So thank you, Aras, for coming on the show today. This is really, I always joke on this episode or the show is that it's always the number of pages that I have and notes that I've taken. And I'm on page 2 today. So
Okay, we did well. I had a blast.
we did really well.
Thank you for having me. And it was great catching up with you again and sharing some old war stories too.
Absolutely. All right. Well, have yourself a great afternoon.
Thank you. Take care.
Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of eCommerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.